Well, it's just 2 weeks now to the start of the 2011 Mitsubishi Motors Badminton Horse Trials. I'm down here in front of Badminton House with event director and course designer Hugh Thomas. 62nd anniversary, but the first on an Easter weekend.
First on an Easter weekend indeed, with the clash of dates with Kentucky, which will be the week after Badminton this year. We had to come forward. We've got this bank holiday idea now to finish on a bank holiday Monday, so it happens to clash with Easter. So we'll just have to see how it works. Not everybody's favourite idea, but at the moment the bookings are pretty good, so I think we'll have a great event.
Well, you certainly will have a great event if the entries are anything to go by.
I know some of my friends say I always say this when I say it must be the strongest field we've ever had, but I don't think I've ever seen the quite strength in depth that we've got this year. I mean, we've got 7 previous winners of badminton, I mean, including, for instance, Mark Todd, who amazingly won here 31 years ago, and Paul Tapner, who won last year, so a huge span. A really good lot of horses and riders from America, from Canada, good Germans, good French, Irish, and of course all the residents, the Aussies and the New Zealanders who are here, and I can't even pick one of them out because there are so many good ones, and the British team in full force. So I think it's an extremely exciting competition we've got in prospect.
Well, you've had some dry weather, but the rain is coming. I'm sure you're pleased to see that.
I'd like to get a little bit wet today, Jamie, if possible.
Well, we're also here to have a good look at the course. Sharon Hunt, the Lamoon winner from last year, is waiting for us at the Lancer Village, and we'll go and meet her there. But before reaching the Lancer Village, the riders will start as usual in the main arena. Jump over the Mitsubishi first, then through the Owl Hole at Fence 2, the reverse way to last year, before sweeping down over the inviting ASX crossover, Keeper's Brush.
Well, Sharon, this is still quite early on, but 2 alternatives here. They can jump either one of these first 2 houses and either one of those 2 houses. And I'm just sort of introducing, you wouldn't call it a problem at this level, but the first time the riders just have to think and decide for themselves which way they want to go.
Yeah, I mean, from that I've seen so far, I probably would have a preference for choosing this right house to the left house, just because I think it probably is a slightly smoother line, but yeah, shouldn't cause any problems.
What usually happens is about 99% of everybody goes one way and everybody wonders why bother to build the others at all, but we'll see on the day.
From the Lancer Village, there's a short gallop to the Cancer Research UK hillside, the same fence as 2 years ago, before galloping onto the HSBC FEI Classics corral.
Well, here, Sharon, I've reversed this complex from last year, the HSBC corral. These obviously be rather bigger by the time we've fitted all the reverse pins and so on in. Easy enough for us to get over today. And this is sort of long distance show jumping, but it's all about constricting the horse, you know, not having them completely open the whole way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for cross country, it's important, you know, to be able to close down the horse and open the horse up. You just had a long run from the last fence, so yeah, this is a good test of just, you know, sort of accuracy and making sure the horse is listening to you at this stage. And it's quite a tight turn still back to the last fence, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, part of the sort of philosophy of course design is to have a pretty easy introduction, get the horses up in the air, get them going, then begin with some problems like at the hillside and with this turning question here. Yeah. And then we're really going to be right into the meat of the course.
Yeah, I mean, this fence is somewhere around minute 2, and you know, you're really hoping to get the horses out of the starting box, settle them down, and get them jumping well. And these questions are good to make sure that the horses are jumping as you'd like and that they're listening to you. It's really important that you get the first few fences right, so that then when we get into the sort of crux of the course, that they're jumping as well as planned. Well,
look, let's drive now rather than walk. Let's go and get in my car and drive on down. I think you'll find the crux of the course is coming up.
I'm sure this looked smaller last year.
Yeah, well, this is the shooting button.
Yeah.
You can see Alan Willis now is just sort of starting to finalise it. We're going to put bullfinch on the back of it this year to make it really stand up. But I mean, it's a nice, straightforward galloping fence. It's as big as it's allowed to be. But
yeah, yeah.
I imagine you quite enjoy jumping it, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Yeah, and it's a place to pick up a bit of speed.
Yeah. Well, then this is the bit of the park that we've probably done the most work of all on the going, because we've put drainage down through here as well as the work to the ground, the sand and the compost and the verti draining and so on. And I think last year, when it was quite wet on cross country day, it still rode reasonably well, so hopefully it's really paid dividends.
Yeah, and it's a big place, you know, sort of area to catch up on your galloping. So yeah, obviously the better the ground, the better we can gallop on it, and better it is for us.
You've ridden around here many times now, and do you try to get ahead of the clock in the early part of the course, or what's your strategy on the time?
Well, with my horse, he wouldn't necessarily make up time anywhere, so I just try and keep to my minute markers as best as I can, and just try and cut corners, and you know, because he is so careful, I used to just try and just keep coming to the fences, and you know, I didn't have to spend a lot of time or wasting time setting up for the fences. But he wouldn't be a horse that you could just gallop and make up time, so I just tried to stick to them as much as I could. But more often than not, I'd find I was slightly down to start with, and then get a bit quicker and a bit quicker as I sort of started to get braver at cutting my lines and things like that.
So
but
it does very much. What you're saying really is you can't have exactly the same strategy. You've got to tailor it to your horse.
Exactly, and I think, you know, you start to work out the areas which aren't quite so quick. For example, I think one year there was a lot of jumping down sort of by the Vicarage V, and we knew that was a bit of a slower sort of area, and then you could catch up again later on. So I think it's just been, you know, sort of going at the pace that's suitable for the horse and not being in too much of a hurry to try and beat the clock, so to speak. So
well, we're just coming now to the Shogun Hollow, which is the first of the fences going into the Vicarage Fields, and the beginning of the most intense part of the course. So I'll be interested to see what you think about our new look feature here.
Yeah, looks good.
I think you'll find there's something fairly different here. Obviously these roundels or whatever I've used before, but up at the sunken road.
Yeah.
And so this year I've tried to ring the changes at the Shogun Hollow.
Yeah.
I'll just be interested to see what you think about it. You've got, you know, there are no alternatives. You just jump all three of them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, these fences in the past, or this fence has sometimes caught a few horses out. It looks to me that you sort of have a nice curving line, a little bit left to right, then back to the left again. And there's a dip there, so we have to see how the horses go up and down, and you could have something that's quite strong and pulls you down the dip. But otherwise it looks very nice, and looks like as long as you ride it well and you've got the control, it should jump well.
Good, well let's just walk through that dip, shall we? Yeah, I think one of the interesting things is you don't always just quite know what sort of stride pattern a horse will do through these sort of dips, or do you think you can predict that?
I think you can try and predict it as much as possible. I would probably have a tendency to take a slightly wider line just to eliminate the risk. But again, it's something that people can watch, you know, the first half jumping and see which is the best route. But I think you can try and, you know, sort of predict as much as possible and have a plan. But of course, horses don't always go to plan, do they?
Good. Well, I'm going to be very interested to see how it works, obviously, and what sort of stride pattern that riders do take through it. When one has designed something a little bit new, it's always fascinating to watch the first dozen or so jump it particularly. Now we've got to go on down to the bank.
Okay.
Yes, the Outlander Bank is a regular fence at Badminton these days, and was the downfall of the overnight leader Kairuda last year, riding Le Prince des Bois.
Well, one day I may regret this bit of extra rain. You never know if we get too much, but anyway, we're pleased to see it. You remember this fence, of course, which becomes quite an ascending oxer. But this year we've moved that skinny so that make a bit of a combination of it.
Yeah, looks good. This fence always rides quite big. It'd be interesting to see how it rides with the fence, you know, the fence afterwards. But it's in a straight line, so it should be good. But some of the horses might balloon this and then find that, you know, it'd be interesting to see, as I say, how they jump the combination afterwards.
Well, this is the first of the several fences across the Vicarage ditch, and we'll go and see the others. But it all comes up quite thick and fast now.
After a sharp left-hand turn following the second element, the HSBC Hexagon Hedge is the next obstacle along the Vicarage ditch at fence 13, and again is likely to catch some out.
Well, Sharon, I'm going to be very interested to see what you think of this latest variation on the Colt Pond. A fence, of course, of the pond that we use every year, but I try to ring the changes as to what the boys and girls have got to do.
Yeah, this looks a very big fence. When you come to it, it looks quite big and quite opposing. We see that the brush is very soft though, and the horses can actually brush through, but it's a big drop into water. So, and the horses will potentially brush through it and, you know, go quite low and maybe not jump it quite so carefully into the water. And then we'll have to see how they land as to how we jump the very acute angle on the way out. And that is a serious angle coming out. As I said, it'll be interesting to see how they jump. You might have long reins. It depends what distance it is. I think it's 4 strides, or I walked it as 4 strides in there. But there's another alternative as well. You can jump into the longer route with a much softer angle coming out, which it'll be interesting to see how well this fence jumps and how many people run out at that fence out there as to who goes which way.
I suppose one of the things about badminton or the other big events where there is closed circuit television for the riders is there's no doubt the first few are studied by everybody else, aren't they? To help the later ones make up their mind which way they want to go.
Absolutely. I think we see how, you know, how the first ones go out and how the fences ride. Sometimes the distance doesn't ride as you like for whatever reason, and sometimes the time might be easier to get because the ground might be particularly good, so you can afford to take a few longer routes and save, sort of a few extra seconds here and there. So we'll wait to see how the course rides and how this rides.
The HSI farmyard at 15 this year is a mirror image of last year's complex, with 2 big 90-degree corners which caused so much trouble in 2010. There are more challenging cross-country fences after this break.